Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me to the webinar on the 7 steps of settling an estate. And thank you for joining us if you are on Facebook as well. Hi, my name is Lynn St. Louis, and I am an estate planning and elder law attorney at ELG Estate Planning. What we're talking about today is going to be a broad overview, general overview of what is involved with settling an estate. And the first thing I want to mention is that we are in Washington State, so some of the things we're talking about will be specific. I'll try to point that out, but nonetheless, since this is a general discussion of settling an estate, there's going to be useful information for you regardless of where you live. And if you live outside of the state of Washington or the state of Idaho, if you have any questions about, in particular, about how you settle an estate for a loved one, somebody who has passed on, please reach out to an elder law attorney in your state. The reason for that is that if you have questions, likely the state's laws where that person passed away is going to be really important to understand. So again, this is just a broad overview to try to get you a better understanding of settling an estate, what's involved with that. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat if you're joining me live right now. And I'll try to answer them before we are finished today. What is an estate? Probably is the first thing before we get into the 7 steps. And a lot of people have this misunderstanding that an estate has to be this big, huge thing. The mansion, the, millions of assets. Well, that is an estate, but that is not all that is an estate. What I mean by that is when somebody passes away, they leave an estate, even if that estate consists of only their car. So it ranges the gamut from virtually nothing in assets to very large assets and a taxable estate. So what we're talking about is, well, what happens when somebody dies? What needs to be done? How do we settle their estate? What I am not focusing on today are the immediate post-death steps. And by that, I mean, somebody has passed away at home or in the hospital, the immediate actions that need to be taken for the funeral home to be called, the funeral services, those types of things. They're really very important. And I encourage everyone to make a plan in advance as to what would happen if, do you prefer cremation or burial? Make a plan, put it in writing, make sure that your loved ones know that. So if they're confronted with your death, at least they have some guidance about that very personal aspect of your passing. Instead, what I'm going to be talking about are the legal aspects of settling an estate. What has to be done from what I call the business perspective, not the personal, but the business perspective. How do the assets go from the decedent to wherever they're supposed to go? All of that. What are the legal requirements? So number 1 of the 7 steps for settling an estate is determining who is responsible for settling the estate. And that's not always clear. If the person who has died left an estate plan, for example, a will or a revocable living trust, then there's more information about the who is responsible, because somebody will say, hey, I'm the personal representative or the executor of the estate. Those mean the same thing. Or I am the successor trustee of this trust. And that is the person who is responsible for carrying out the business end of settling the estate. But that is not always clear, especially if there hasn't been an estate plan actually done by the person who passed away. On other videos, I talk about the fact that you have an estate plan, whether you know it or not. It's either the one that you put into place, and if you did not put it into place, then the state has an estate plan for you. And if there is no estate plan in place that the person put into place, then it's going to be the state's estate plan. And how that helps us answer the question of who is settling the estate is that the state will look to the relation of the survivors. So is there a surviving spouse? Then they will have the right to settle the estate of their deceased spouse. Was it a single person? Then under the laws, at least of the state of Washington, we're looking at the children of the decedent, the deceased person, will have the right to settle the estate. And it's not oldest, then next, and then next. It is any of the children. And so there will need to be an agreement. And if there's no agreement as to who's in charge, well, in that event, the court is going to have to help resolve that disagreement. Usually the who is going to be responsible for settling the estate isn't a difficult question to answer. So let's say that we've found that there is a will and we know who the executor is, or there's a trust and we know who the successor trustee is. So now we know the who will settle the estate. One little aside I wanted to mention, if that person doesn't want to, typically there's an alternate person listed, because maybe at the time when they agreed to serve as the person to settle the estate, they were in a place where they thought they could handle it. Maybe later on down the road, when the time comes, they don't want to. Things are going on in their life. They aren't compelled to settle the estate. No one is ever compelled to settle the estate. Usually, then the alternate will step in and settle the estate. All right, let's move on to number 2. The next step in settling the estate is determining who is going to help settle the estate. If you've done this job before, maybe you have confidence in what needs to be done. A lot of times, however, even if you've settled an estate before, you know that you are going to need the help of an attorney to proceed with settling the estate. And we're going to talk about the difference between having a probate in the court and settling an estate through a trust. But regardless of whether it's a will or there's no will, there's a probate or there's not a probate, there's a revocable living trust administration, unless you're an attorney that practices in estate planning, there's a lot of things that you likely don't know about what has to be done with settling an estate. So the who is going to help you? Usually it's going to be an attorney. Oftentimes there needs to be an accountant who's involved too. We'll talk about that. Sometimes that, there's certainly family who can help if you're cleaning out a house or doing an estate sale. That if you just think about other people who can help you, if you're the executor, if you're the person in charge, great. Think of yourself as the coach, for example, but you can involve other people that you can delegate to that can help you, people who are appropriate. So don't think that you have to do this all on your own. Usually when a loved one has passed, it's a very difficult time. It's very stressful. And it helps. It makes a difference if there's people you can rely on to help you carry forward and do the job that needs to be done.